Pippin, the Tony Award-winning musical from the composer of Wicked, is playing right now at Arlington's Signature Theater. It's an electrifying story of one young man's search for meaning, glory, and everything in between. It's bold, it's beautiful, and it's only here for 11 weeks through July 26th. Treat yourself. Tickets and information at sigtheater.org. That's sigtheatre.org. Today on CityCast DC, we're talking about the politics of crime in DC and some other intel we picked up from our big election poll. We're going to talk about who deserves credit for restoring those gorgeous Malcolm X Park fountains, and we're going to get into DC's booming EDM scene. Plus, in a members-only fourth segment, Metro's boss wants to take on fare evasion in a new way, and not everyone who works for him is happy about it. I'm here with my CityCast colleagues Emma Uber and Kayla Cote-Stemmerman. It's Friday, May 22nd. I'm Michael Schaefer. Here's what DC's talking about. Hey, Kayla.
Good morning, Mike.
Hey, Emma.
Hello.
So, you guys, before we get into it, the Social Security Administration every year puts out a list of top baby names by state and DC. Ours is out this year. The number one name for boys is Noah. 58 boys called Noah in DC. Emma, congratulations, because you have the number one girl's name. 36.
That's unsurprising to me.
That's awesome.
I feel like in Indiana, where I'm from, it's been the number one girl's name for forever.
So you're like ahead of the curve here. My reaction to this, like as a, native of a very different Washington, is like, look at these names. Noah, Liam, Henry,
Yeah,
Zoe,
they're very
Lucy.
Social media, I feel.
We did a lot of polling this week, which got into demographics of DC, but I think this says like even more about the demographics of changing DC. I don't say that in a judging position because the number 6 girl's name is Eleanor, and I've got one of those.
Can't be too harsh.
Do you guys have a favorite name or a least favorite name on these lists?
I like the classics. I do feel like the boys' names, like, Williams, James, like those are, those have been around, right?
It's true. And I feel like they're making an almost ironic comeback because a couple years ago, like everyone was like a Declan or something.
I also really
I
also really like the classics. And I mean, I have a running note in my notes app about baby names I like. And I'm not going to lie. Apparently, I'm not very original because I'm seeing quite a few of my faves on these lists. So I think I'm less original than I thought.
Everyone on the girl's name list is someone my grandmother was friends with.
For a fact, Mike? Or
I mean, in some cases, yes, but like they all have names of people who I associate with like
Charlotte, Lucy. Yeah, they do feel very old school.
I characterize my like taste in names as like people who could be like a Jane Austen character, and that's very much the people on this list. Like, of course, Emma is the titular character, but Eleanor, Charlotte, Liam, those are all people that could have existed in a Jane Austen novel.
It's true. And William and James are right next to each other. Who knew? So we had more serious polling we did this week, too. And it dovetails with a lot of the stuff Emma's been covering. We polled on this question of teen curfews, which has been a big issue. We actually our poll was in the field when the Chipotle brawl broke out, but I think it concluded on, our poll was between May 12th and 17th. I think the brawl was on the night of the 16th. So I would suspect most people hadn't heard of it. But even without that, 72% of people, including a lot of people who support Janice Lewis George, who's against curfews, 72% of people are in favor of a teen curfew. And it sort of adds an interesting dimension to some of the stuff you were covering this week, Emma.
Absolutely. I think myself, along with a lot of other people, were kind of shocked to see the number that high just because the curfew debate has been so ongoing. And honestly, if you go to the city council meetings, the protests outside the Wilson building before city council meetings, a lot of the hearings, a lot of the people there are speaking against curfews. That hasn't necessarily been my experience, but I've just been out in the field talking to people regularly, but I didn't expect to see the split as harsh as it was, that 72% of people were in support. And again, a lot of that polling was before this viral brawl that I think really broke through to people who may not normally be tuning into DC politics. Well, on the other hand, a lot of the people that I'm seeing comment on the Chipotle brawl don't live here. Like, it's a lot of like national media pundits. So I would wonder how that's shaping locals' thoughts.
Well, I think that it's shaping the thoughts of some locals who matter, which is to say, if something gets picked up in the right-wing media and right-wing social media, that really does influence the behavior of the administration in power, and they control the prosecutor's office here. So what some MAGA social media handle that is based God knows where says about this is actually not irrelevant to people who actually live in D.C.
And what does this say, do you think, about the upcoming mayoral election, too? Because I think hasn't Janice Lewis George come out against the curfews? Can we speculate there?
I look at even almost half of her supporters favor curfews. It's this real sort of matter of principle for a rather small percentage of the population. And I think this is a place where, man, I'm happy Emma is here, because like the decline of local media, I think, means that because there's fewer people out talking to normies, we are going to overinterpret the views of the impassioned people who come down to the city council to protest or who are on social media and so on. The passion there, these, are people who think this is a grave injustice and a danger of, policing teenagers, exposing them to law enforcement, potential violence, just for being out and being maybe dumb teens. That is where a lot of passion is, and that's where Janice Lewis George is on this. It's not where most of the population is. And I think the pro-curfew side don't feel nearly the same passion, because I think, I don't think anyone's under the illusion that, those kids who are, wailing the hell out of each other in Chipotle were going to be like, oh, better go home, lads. It's curfew time. So I don't think anybody is saying, this is a great fix. So obviously the passion is going to be people who do see it as a grave injustice.
Yeah, that's a great point. Very few people are like, this is the perfect solution. The words that everyone talking about this, especially council members, like to use is that it's one tool in the city's toolbox to address this. And a lot of pretty much everyone agrees with some of the long-term solutions that Janice Lewis George has proposed, such as more investment in activities for teens, extended Department of Parks and Recreation hours, etc. But while Janice Lewis George is saying we need to do that instead of the curfew because there are federal troops in DC and she's worried that they're not trained in de-escalation. That's her main point. People like Kenya McDuffie and Gary Goodweather, who were at the debate, treated it as kind of an emergency stopgap to stop the violence right now and then give them some time without these teen takeovers while they implement longer term solutions.
I thought it was amazing that McDuffie actually went down in front of the Chipotle and had a photo op there.
Yeah.
Just to say, his campaign has been increasingly focused on crime, public safety, on accusing Janice Lewis George, who is leading the race, of not really caring about delivering accountability for people who harm others. Weirdly, he and Janice Lewis George have not, used to have not that different stances on public safety, but both of them, I think, have become more forthright about going in different directions. So he's I think thinks that all the talk about other activities is he wants those, but he doesn't. I don't think he's accusing Janice of not being a credible proponent of them, and she's accusing him of being a flip-flopper and a hypocrite. So here we are. Can I talk about some other stuff that's in the poll, though?
Yeah, tell us some other stuff, Mike.
We were I was obsessed with some of the stuff about the coalitions. We obviously asked who you're going to vote for and stuff like that, but about the coalitions and the feelings of people that we asked, for instance, people who are relatively new to DC, who've been here within 10 years, overwhelmingly for Janice. People who are DC natives, very strongly, not quite as strongly, but very strongly for Kenyon. There's a huge age split. Younger equals pro-Janice, older equals pro-Kenyon. There's an income split, which is not what maybe you'd expect at first blush, given that Janice is a socialist or a democratic socialist. But higher income is pro-Janice and lower income is pro-Kenyon. Not in neither case by overwhelming numbers, but it kind of scrambles a lot of the assumptions. My favorite question, I think, was we asked people, "Are you a Commanders fan?" Which is, I think probably a bit of a measure of maleness and a bit of, but certainly a measure of like longtime DC-ness. And Commanders fans broke overwhelmingly for Kenyon. Fans of other teams or fans of non-fans of football broke overwhelmingly for Janice. So I was pretty into that one. We also asked about have you commuted by bike in the last 6 months?
Oh wait, what were the results of that one?
What do you think?
I'm going Janice as being more bikers.
Huge,
really.
And then the other thing we caught was like a DC version of what I think is a national phenomenon. If you figure DC is like almost entirely Democratic, among white voters, an enormous split. White voters over 46, pro-Kenyon by like 20 points. White voters under that, pro-Janice by like 30 points. You didn't see nearly the same generational divide in non-white voters. But I thought that was an amazing number. And if you just look at any story about like Democratic primaries wherever, that is a real dynamic. And I think sometimes in local DC politics, we think of ourselves as like different from any national trend. But that's one that you're seeing all over the place.
Yeah, interesting.
Not to toot our own horn here, but I think this is this not the first sort of polling that's been done around the mayor's race?
Toot away. Yes, it is. The other thing, that I thought was the thing that really surprised me, because we have talked on CityCast and, anywhere in the media, you read stories about the tough year DC's had. And even in our poll, we found I think almost 10% of Black Washingtonians had someone in their household who'd lost a federal job. About half of everybody had somebody who they're close with who'd lost a federal job. This means you lose your health care and you lose your pension. This is like serious stuff. So despite this kind of devastation, 54% of people told us they're basically optimistic about Washington's direction.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
I know, that kind of made me emotional. I was shocked, but
seriously. Oh my gosh.
And it maybe this won't surprise, but it skews older who are more optimistic, and Gen Z. My theory of the case is older people, they have some memory of like a time when Washington was very violent and I think quite poorly governed and so on. And so they're like, well, at least it's better than that. People in Gen Z have less. You lose your job and it sucks no matter what age you are. But if you're, middle age or even an older millennial and you've started to build your whole identity around being a federal employee and then you get kicked to the curb, that is, I think, a much more psychologically jarring thing than just losing a paycheck.
I can attest to this as a Gen Z who lost their job. It sucks really bad, but you don't have a mortgage or children, so it's a little bit less than people who are building families.
Can I poll you guys? How optimistic are you about Washington?
I'm very optimistic about Washington, but I'm just a very optimistic person in general. You're
comporting with your generation.
I haven't been in Washington for super long, but I love it here, and I think everyone has been able to feel that, for lack of a better term, the vibes have been off this past year. It's been really hard for a lot of people, but I also think that we've seen Washington pull together in a lot of meaningful and beautiful ways.
Yeah, I love DC. I always think it's going to come out on top, but it doesn't mean it might not be a slog to get there.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm fairly, I just think any city in the world, when its major industry contracts in a massive way, and when the kind of basic rules of its major industry probably change forever, in the sense that even under, some Bernie Sanders gets elected in 2028 at age 90 or whatever he's going to be. Even in that case, the people who come and work for the federal government, they may be really happy then, but they'll never quite have the sense of like, this is a job I can have for my life, because they'll know they're always one election away from a change. And anyway, I think cities where that kind of change happens, it's a real challenge. When I talk to like headhunters and economists and stuff, they'll say, well, Washington has an incredibly high-skilled workforce, and someone will figure that out and take advantage of it. And that, like, if you work for like U.S. aid and you can get a shipment of humanitarian supplies to Kandahar in the middle of a war, you're probably good at some other stuff too that someone in the private sector is going to want. That's what they say. I think the slog from here to there could be a very long one, though.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of disillusionment, and I think that the city will be all right. But I think that a lot of the disillusionment and loss of faith in like what I do matters, people care about what I do, that sort of sense that a lot of people in DC cared about, I think has weighed heavily on the city.
It's all just to say it's a really fun time to be a reporter here, because as one of my first bosses said, we commodify other people's misery, but we also celebrate other people's triumphs.
That's a horrible way to put it.
Lovely.
But it is.
I am not aligning with that definition of reporting.
Can't tell everybody that.
I just mean to say, living in interesting times is interesting, but it's not necessarily the greatest for everybody. I would much rather live in a placid, boring time.
No, it makes it exciting, and it makes us happy that we do what we do.
So off that, and before we jump in the next topic, can I please give a big thank you to our newest CityCast neighbors, Helder G, Alyssa S, and Jared W. Thank you so much for your support. Here's what Helder said. I was really into this. He said, on Monday, I donated to CityCast DC for the first time. On Wednesday, they produced citywide polling results. This is a solid return on investment in local journalism. Helder, it was all you, man. And you, listener, can support our growing newsroom and ambitious projects like this poll by going to membership.citycast.fm and signing up. Only $10 a month or $100 for the year.
In DC, something is changing. From 2023 to 2024, fatal opioid overdoses dropped by 33%. That's not a statistic. That's somebody's auntie, sister, father, neighbor, friend who is still here. Now, behind that number is a city that decided to fight back. And the DC Department of Behavioral Health is at the center of it, connecting people to prevention, treatment, and recovery services every single day. So whether you're trying to protect someone you love, find a way through your own battle, or simply understand what your community is going through, Know Your Path DC is here for you. Know your worth, know your alternatives, know your value, know yourself. Take it from me when I tell you recovery is possible. It happens every day in this city for real people. Learn more and find resources at knowyourpathdc.com.
Hey there, it's Mike. One of our sponsors today is DC's Board of Elections, who want DC voters to know the primary and special elections are coming up on June 16th. And for the first time, we're using ranked choice voting, or RCV. You can now rank up to 5 candidates on your ballot. If your first choice candidate doesn't make it, your vote moves to your second choice and continues to your next choice until there's a winner. Just remember, do not give multiple candidates the same ranking, do not rank a candidate more than once, and do not skip rankings. You can vote by drop box, during early voting, by mail, or on Election Day. Have questions about the elections or RCV? Contact the DC Board of Elections at 202-727-2525 or visit dcboe.org. DC, get ready to rank your vote. So, Emma, you were out reporting at what you called one of Washington's hottest clubs this week, Malcolm X Park.
Yeah, so it was my first time seeing the Malcolm X Park fountain working. It was absolutely gorgeous, beautiful. I saw the pictures and videos from over the weekend, and it was packed. I went during the day on Tuesday, and there was still a good amount of people out and about, moms walking their babies in strollers, people walking their dogs, some joggers, and it just was beautiful. I mean, my friends and I have gone to picnic at the park a couple times, and we love it there, but never seen it with the fountains on, and it was gorgeous, and I knew that I had to write about it.
So because this is 2026 and this is DC, this has quickly become a political, taking credit for this quickly become a political thing. That President Trump has claimed credit for this. A lot of his aligned social media accounts have basically said this was a crime-ridden, hellhole, dangerous, horrible place before President Trump made it a beautiful magic space. People in D.C. have been like, wait a minute, I used to have picnics there with my kids. Like, just the fountain wasn't working, but it wasn't all that. But what did happen? Like, that fountain has been under repair and closed for so long. Why did it get fixed now? Who did that?
A lot of the credit goes to the Trump administration. The Trump administration and the National Park Service under Trump have put a huge effort towards fixing up a bunch of the city's fountains and other water features at the monuments ahead of the America 250 celebrations. They've dedicated millions of dollars to this. The park alone is a $16 million renovation. And so the Trump administration, because as part of the Make DC Safe and Beautiful task force, has just dedicated a ton of resources towards fast-tracking a bunch of these repairs that DC has needed for a long time ahead of the America 250 celebrations this summer.
I think, I live like half a block away from the park, and I've never seen it running. I've lived here in this apartment for over 5 years, and it's like a bit hard for me to admit, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not a Trump voter. And I disagree with a lot of the things that he's doing in DC. But the fountain is nice. The fountain is really nice. And I feel kind of horrible admitting it, or that I appreciate it, that I like it. It's not, I don't want to support what Trump is doing in DC. And I'm curious if you've been able to talk to anybody, if you've gotten like a sense from people, like, is there support for this? Like, are people conflicted like I am? Or is it just, people are excited to have the fountain on, they just want to be outside in the summer?
That was the kind of the crux of a lot of the reporting I did, because, look, having this beautiful fountain on for people who live around it, objectively good thing for the neighborhood, right? But I think that they were kind of prepared to maybe give Trump that win in a way. But when I talked to people on Tuesday, some people had started to feel very irked by the rhetoric going on social media. Trump, again, had been calling the park marred by homelessness, and like it was decrepit and it was dirty and there were drugs. And like, so I think that people kind of got their back up and was like, hey, that's not what my neighborhood was like before this. But I think overall, people are still really happy that the fountain is running after a certain amount of time. It's in Ward 1. Like 5% of voters voted for Trump in Ward 1 in 2024. So it might be one of the only issues that Trump is going to succeed on in that area of the city. But the reality is that 90% of DC's parkland is owned by the federal government. So the Trump administration holds the key to whether community hubs like Malcolm X Park or DuPont Circle have a working fountain. And so it's kind of a big deal for the federal government to be willing to put this much money into it. And someone that I was speaking to at the park made a really good point. And I've also seen this point made on social media. But like, Trump might be the only president who was able to do this. Like an Obama tried to put millions of dollars towards repairing fountains in DC. And he's going to get skewered alive for caring too much about the DC elite. Like, no one's going to accuse Trump of that. So why not have him fix the fountains?
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. Trump, with his obsession with America 250 and his obsession with sort of glorious monumental things in Washington, I think is the only person who would have lit the fire that was lit here and gotten away with some of the budget stuff that happened here to make this happen. Yeah, I think Trump, with his obsession with America 250 and his similar obsession with like the monumental, triumphal parts of Washington, is going to be focusing on things like fountains in a way that another president wouldn't and probably couldn't get away with, as you said. So for people in D.C. neighborhoods, you mentioned that Meridian Hill Park, known to us as Malcolm X Park, is in Ward 1. There's not as much of the monumental federal stuff in neighborhoods. DuPont Circle fountain is one. There's no fountain, but there's a lot of renovations underway in Logan Circle. There's some of the parks on the Hill are federal neighborhood parks. Most of the federal land in D.C., though, that is in neighborhoods has historically been a thing people are so mad about. That the National Park Service, which is built to like run Yosemite or run the Lincoln Memorial, is not built to like cater to neighbors who just want a ball field or a dog run or something. And historically has been has had very poor relations with local DC. It's weird. The National Park Service is by far the most popular federal agency. But in DC, they think of it as like that absentee landlord that won't mow the dang lawn on like the traffic circle in my neighborhood or on that weird triangular patch next to an avenue that for historic reasons is owned by the feds. America 250 will pass for sure, and Trump's attention may similarly pass. And you're still going to have a situation where a lot of, for weird reasons, a lot of neighborhood parks in DC are run by people who don't answer to the neighbors. And like, you know, if a mayor was in charge of Meridian Hill Park and was going to like infuriate potential voters by leaving the fountain unrepaired for years and years, I suspect there would have been action a lot earlier. So I think DC people should totally take the win and note that Trump did something that hadn't happened before. But I still think the system we've got where like Meridian Hill Park shouldn't be a national park. It should be a neighborhood park, and it should be run by people who can get voted out of office if they screw it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's absolutely a win. But that was another part of my reporting, just talking about kind of the politics of the repairs. Part of it was what people thought, but part of it was the amount of maneuvering behind the scenes between DC government, particularly Mayor Muriel Bowser and the Trump administration, that these repairs took. To your point, I mean, Mayor Bowser has been bringing this up to Trump the entirety of his second term, but she needs the president, as the mayor, she needs the president to take out the trash and to make the fountains work and to repair the lawns in some of the parks that her constituents use. And that's an entirely unique position. But it was really interesting. Like, we know that, you know, Mayor Bowser took a very adversarial, like, leader of the resistance stance during Trump's first term. And then during his second term, she immediately signaled that she was going to be more collaborative, try to provoke him a little less, try to work with him a little bit more, appease him. In the second term, when before he was even sworn in, she went to Mar-a-Lago. And we know that in that very first meeting at Mar-a-Lago, she singled out the parks as a place that they can work together. She was like, look, I mean, Trump had been very hostile towards DC on the campaign trail. And I think that she was like, look, you care about beautifying DC. I care about beautifying DC. Here's a place that's going to be under your jurisdiction that's really not beautiful right now. And even when he launched the DC Safe and Beautiful Task Force, she would push in the letter, she puts a focus on the parks. She responds to his questions about law enforcement. She defends the policy of MPD not asking about immigration, maybe not as firmly as some people would like her to, but she's trying to walk that line. But in addition to the questions, responding to the questions, she includes a list of the not working fountains and goes, here's a great place to start. She's really been trying to push the parks as like the thing that both Trump, in his obsession with DC, and DC residents who voted overwhelmingly against Trump, can both get behind.
So this park is officially Meridian Hill Park. It's a national park property. Starting in, I think, the 70s, there was an effort locally to rename it Malcolm X Park. A lot of people who grew up in the city since then have known it by that name. When the mayor is talking to the president, what name does she use?
I'm sure she uses Meridian Hill Park. I believe that's what she uses in her letter. I think that's the official name, but we know us locals like to call it Malcolm X.
Okay, CityCast listeners, before the DC summer heat cranks up your AC bill, let's talk windows. Because old, drafty windows are basically money flying right out of your walls, and Window Nation can fix that. They will replace your windows with custom-built, energy-efficient ones at a price that you will actually love. And here's why we trust them. They have an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, a 96% customer satisfaction rating, and over 45,000 5-star reviews. And right now, Window Nation is running their Buy 4, Get 4 free sale, meaning that you could replace every window in your home and get half of them free. Honestly, it's one of the smartest investments you can make. But this sale ends soon, so do not wait. Schedule your fast, free consultation today at windownation.com.
Petworth Porch Fest is coming up on May 30th from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. Petworth turns into a walkable music festival, the biggest porch fest in the DMV. Over 400 acts, 160 porches, rock, jazz, folk, go-go funk, something for everyone, from international touring acts to neighborhood dad garage bands. We'll even be there. Come say hi to us outside of the main stage from 5 to 8 p.m. Not sure where to start? Check the schedule at the new Porch Finder tool at petworthporchfest.com. Kayla, your Obsessed newsletter, second edition, is about DC's burgeoning EDM scene. I grew up at the time when the local sort of music genres, homegrown music genres, were punk and go-go. Tell me about this one. Like, walk us through the scene.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Mike, yeah, you might have a good sense of sort of what it was like back in the day. And I think sort of what I wrote about is how it's entering kind of this new era, especially this summer. We're seeing like a ton of festivals coming up. Project Glow is about to happen. They just sold over 40,000 tickets a day. It's going to be there.
What's Project Glow?
Oh, I apologize. Project Glow is it's an EDM festival at RFK Stadium. I think this is their 5th year running, and it is going to be the biggest one ever. They have basically sold out, over 40,000 people per day. And it's actually going to be the largest festival in the Mid-Atlantic. So it's growing in DC. Go ahead.
So what part of it is homegrown? Is it the artists, or is it just that this is a place that's really into events?
No, the artists come from all over. This is just a homegrown event. It's thrown by the same people that own Echo Stage, which is a very large, 3,000 person capacity EDM space in DC. But essentially, I talked to people about sort of why now, like why is, EDM having this kind of renaissance in DC and dance and, going out to all of these clubs. And I think part of it is that we have actually quite a few new clubs here in DC. So we have Bertha, if you speak German, which just opened. We have Transmission, which just opened also in the last year. And these are much more smaller sort of community spaces where people can go to listen to huge varieties of music, but mostly dance music. And they've had a lot of success. And I think that's partially due to social media and also people coming out of COVID. And it's also due to sort of the EDM becoming more mainstream. The sound itself is becoming more appealing to more people and a more diverse range of people. And a lot of the people I talked to sort of said there used to be two worlds in DC, right? You had like the alternative, the counterculture world, and then you had like the suits world, the government world. And now those are very much becoming intertwined, and that's no longer a divide. And you have a lot more government people coming to dance shows. You have a lot more, counterculture people in government jobs. Like that line is just being blended more and more, which has led to more and more people being interested in it.
So wait, give me the sociology here. Like back in the day, the punk scene, very white. Go-go scene was black music, homegrown. Who do I see if I go to an EDM show?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think it's become much more inclusive, right? I think that whiteness has thankfully faded out a little bit, and you have a lot more, especially, when you're thinking about DJs, you have a really, really huge DJ culture here that is Black owned, right? You have Black Techno Matters, you have, these bands like Black Rave Culture, and that's really bringing in a new, it's not new, right? It's always been there. That counterculture thing has always been a huge part of DC's identity. But it's becoming a more diverse and more inclusive space, I think, for all types, whether it's, job, race, gender, whatever that may be.
Yeah. And just from like my social media the last couple months, DC has been able to attract some insanely sought after DJs from all over the world. Is that a newer trend, a newer phenomenon, and what's
Absolutely.
DC doing to pull these like world-class acts to these
well,
kind of new and up-and-coming
Absolutely.
clubs?
Yeah, no, this was one thing I really wanted to set out to answer because I feel like DC is passed over a lot of the time when it comes to pop music, right? Like we see big pop artists never come to DC. It's always so frustrating. And with EDM, that doesn't seem to be the case, right? We're attracting like massive global stars, like filling up these huge clubs. And I think part of that, I talked to the founders of Project Glow, and they're saying that DC has really gone from what is seen as a second-tier market to a first-tier market, right? It's somewhere that really attracts these big DJs, and that's in part because we have some really great venues. Echo Stage was just named number 6 on DJ Mag's 100 best clubs in the world list, which is insane because there's a lot of really good clubs in the world, and it's a publicly voted list. So tons and tons of people agree with that. And we have more venues, we have more space for bigger artists, and it's really starting to take off and become really attractive to artists all over the world.
What about the underground club scene?
Yeah, I mean, part of this I would describe as being the underground club scene. I think it's not underground in the way that it once was, though, right? It used to be that if you didn't know about it, you didn't know about it, right? Like you had to be brought there. It was in some warehouse, like on the outskirts of Baltimore. And you really had to be in the know and in the scene. I think this is because of the prevalence of social media, it's so much easier to find out about things happening, and people want you to come, right? Like people want it to be successful and they want to fill out their shows. So they're posting more and more on social media. I think, Transmission which is a new club on H Street that opened in 2025 in the old Rock and Roll Hotel. They sort of classify themselves as like an underground space. But you can find all of their shows online, obviously. That's where you buy your tickets. And
does it say Transmission on the door?
No, it's pretty,
Okay.
it's pretty
right,
low key. Yeah. So it's kind of like the speakeasy culture in DC. It's like, okay, yeah, like it's a speakeasy, but you can find it on your iPhone. It's like a bit more of that. And of course, there's always going to be, the much more niche underground scene where that's sort of from DJ collectives and stuff like that might not have an official space, right? And even that, I mean, to me is even hard to find sometimes. So it kind of depends on how underground you want to go, I guess, Mike,
Last question. Night on the town EDM.
Oh.
What's it going to cost me? Like, how much does it cost to get in? What am I going to be spending on drinks, et cetera, et cetera?
I think it totally depends on what you're seeing. I think, if you're going to a big show at Echo Stage, it can be quite a lot, or if you're going to a festival, Project Glow is like $200. But I think if some of the smaller shows at, Transmission, which I was just talking about, for a local artist, you're looking at $20-$30. It's not going to break the bank. And we have some really great local artists here. So it might be a good thing to check out. I think it's similar to other concerts, though.
My theory of the case, it actually ties to the mayoral election. They're talking endlessly in the mayoral election about how expensive housing is, how expensive rent is in DC. It is no surprise that our favorite types of music shifted away from like rock and roll or go-go or whatever at the same time as real estate prices ran up, because those kinds of music require real estate, right? You need a space to practice with your band, and it's loud as hell. So you need to have a neighborhood be like cheap enough that your neighbors are not going to complain, or they're not going to get listened to, or what. I mean, in a weird way, like the punk music scene, the go-go music scene, like depended on the city's like poverty and dysfunction. It doesn't take nearly as much space to create EDM music. Like literally, it's right there in the name, electronic. Obviously, it takes a lot of space to dance to it and perform it. But it's another reason why housing prices need to come down in this dang city.
No, you're absolutely right, Mike. I have to ask also, did you ever have any experience with, the sort of, I know you were a punk kid back in the day, any counterculture fun experiences that you can point to that you remember?
I mean, I just, not really, but like, I think of, it was such a it was so dependent on DC being kind of emptying out. You could, the 930 Club was at 930 F Street, a big, busy commercial block now. There were like wig stores around then, and you could always find parking within a block or two. So it's just to say, people sort of nostalgize that time, but it actually, it's like, I don't know, it's like skateboarding in Malcolm X Park or something. Like, oh yeah, that was a really awesome thing for some people to do, but it was dependent on like this kind of screwed up situation where the fountains weren't working and so on. So maybe there's like a bittersweetness there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, today paid subscribers get a bonus 4th roundup chat about Metrobus fare evasion. If you want to be sure you always get the full episode, please become a member. Head to membership.citycast.fm and sign up. It's only $10 a month. Members get ad-free listening, exclusive members events, and an extra events newsletter every week. Again, that's membership.citycast.fm. And that is all for today here on CityCast DC. Our production team this week was Annie Reese, Julia Karen, Ash Durbin, Alyssa Castles, and Laura Tsutsui. Our newsletter writers are Emma Uber, Kayla Kuti-Stemmerman, and me, Michael Schaefer. And our hosts are Bridget Todd and me, Michael Schaefer, also. Music is by Alex Roldan, with additional music from Tambor, Rue Walker, and Philip Ayers from Triple Scoop Music via Getty Images. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell everyone about it when you are out at Project Glow? We'll be back Tuesday morning with more news from around the city. Bye.